On windswept cliffs, towering stones lean against the sky, their weathered faces etched with mysteries older than written words. They have stood through storms and centuries, silent sentinels, watching civilizations rise and fall, never surrendering their secrets. But the riddle of the ancient world is everywhere. Beneath the rolling sands of Egypt, corridors stretch into the earth, hiding chambers no one was meant to find. In the depths of the Pacific ruins, slumber beneath the waves, hinting at forgotten kingdoms swallowed by the sea. High in the Andes terraces cling to the mountainside, built with a precision that mocks our modern tools. Across deserts, oceans, jungles, and mountains, traces of something greater than ourselves remain whispering from the shadows of time. What power compelled humanity to shape such enduring marvels? Were these monuments born from devotion, survival, or knowledge we no longer possess? The answers evade us, leaving only fragments and speculation. So, step closer. Imagine yourself brushing dust from an artifact standing before a stone that has outlived 1,000 generations, or simply listening in wonder as history opens its hidden doors. And as we embark on this journey, remember, follow this channel to explore more of the world's enduring enigmas. And add your voice comment, the time you're listening, and the place where you now stand in the story of our shared past. Curse of the Pharaohs. In the winter of 1922, beneath the shifting sands of the Valley of the Kings, British archaeologist Howard Carter uncovered the most famous tomb in history, the resting place of the boy king Tutankhamun. Gold shimmered in the lamplight, treasures untouched for more than 3,000 years. It was the discovery of a lifetime. But within months, whispers began to spread. People connected to the excavation were falling ill or dying in strange ways. Newspapers spoke of an ancient warning etched into the tomb. Death will come on swift wings to those who disturb the king. Thus was born the legend of the Curse of the Pharaohs. The first to die was Lord Carnarvon, the wealthy patron who financed the expedition. Just months after the tomb's opening, he succumbed to a sudden infection from a mosquito bite. When news of his death spread, sensational headlines around the world proclaimed it the work of a curse. Soon after, other deaths followed: archaeologists, museum staff, and even relatives of those involved. Each new misfortune seemed to confirm the legend that the pharaohs had placed eternal protections on their groups. The idea of cursed tombs was not new. Ancient Egyptians believed strongly in protecting the dead. Spells inscribed on walls, amulets buried with bodies, and elaborate rituals all aimed to keep intruders at bay. Some tombs did carry warnings, though most were symbolic rather than literal. Still, to a public enthralled by Egypt's mysteries, the notion of a deadly curse was irresistible. Tutankhamun's discovery came at the height of global fascination with the occult, and the media eagerly fed the flames. Stories grew more dramatic with each telling. Some claimed that all 26 people present at the tomb's opening died mysteriously, though in reality most lived long lives. Others insisted that strange events followed the expedition: lights flickering in Cairo, dogs howling at the moment of Carnarvon's death, or Carter's pet canary being devoured by a cobra, the symbol of Egyptian kingship. True or not, the tales cemented the idea that Tutankhamun's tomb had unleashed something beyond human control. Scientists offered more rational explanations. Some suggested that toxic mold or bacteria had grown in the sealed tomb for centuries, infecting those who entered. Others argued that coincidence explained the deaths. Carnarvon was already ill, and many so-called victims were elderly. Still, the narrative of a curse endured, partly because people wanted it to. The idea that Egypt's kings could reach across time to punish those who disturbed their rest was far more captivating than microbes. Beyond Tutankhamun, the legend of the curse extended to other digs. Archaeologists working in Egypt often joked nervously about whether they had angered the gods. Museums receiving mummies reported accidents and mishaps. In London, a rumor spread that a mummy on display at the British Museum had caused fires and deaths until it was locked away. Whether coincidence or imagination, the stories reinforce the aura of danger surrounding Egypt's dead. Theories flourished. Some believed the pharaohs had devised chemical traps, poison set to release when tombs were opened. Others suggested curses were psychological once people believed they were doomed. Stress and fear could take a toll on their health. A few even claimed the curse was real, a supernatural force unleashed when sacred ground was disturbed. Hollywood seized the idea, spawning decades of mummy movies, where the dead rise to avenge themselves further, embedding the legend in popular culture. For modern Egyptians, the curse is both a point of pride and unease. On one hand, it reflects the power their ancestors still hold over the imagination of the world. On the other, it distracts from the scientific achievements of archaeology and the true wonders of ancient civilization. Yet even today, guides whisper warnings to tourists in hushed tones: never mock the dead, never disrespect the tombs, for the curse may still be listening. So, is the curse of the pharaohs a supernatural reality, a biological hazard, or simply a legend spun by eager journalists? Was Lord Carnarvon the victim of ancient magic, deadly mold, or cruel chance? Until every tomb is opened and every mystery revealed, the curse will linger, a shadow draped over Egypt's golden treasures, reminding us that some secrets once disturbed may never let us go unpunished. Secrets of the Osiris cult, rites of death and rebirth. In the pantheon of ancient Egypt, no god held greater sway over the mysteries of death than Osiris, lord of the underworld, judge of souls, and symbol of resurrection. Osiris became the focus of one of Egypt's most secretive and enduring cults. His followers believed that through hidden rituals they could transcend death itself, joining their god in eternal life. But the exact practices of the Osiris cult remain clouded in secrecy, half hidden in inscriptions, half buried in myth. The story of Osiris begins with a tragedy. According to myth, he was murdered by his jealous brother Set, who tore his body into pieces and scattered them across Egypt. His wife, the goddess Isis, gathered the fragments, reassembled him, and with her magic restored him to life. Osiris did not return to rule the living, but instead became king of the dead, presiding over the Hall of Judgment, where every soul faced the weighing of the heart. To Egyptians, this myth was not just story, it was a promise. Death was not the end, but a passage. By the Middle Kingdom, the cult of Osiris spread widely, evolving into a complex network of temples and ceremonies. Pilgrims journeyed to Abydos, his sacred city, to take part in festivals reenacting his death and resurrection. Some inscriptions suggest initiates underwent symbolic trials, journeys through darkness, ritual purification, and moments of symbolic death. They emerged reborn, their fate tied to Osiris himself. To be part of the cult was to secure one's place in the afterlife. But what actually happened behind the closed doors of Osiris temples remains uncertain. Archaeological evidence points to underground chambers, narrow corridors, and cenotaphs, empty tombs meant for ritual rather than burial. Some believe these spaces were designed to simulate the underworld, forcing initiates to confront fear and mortality before emerging resurrected. Hieroglyphic texts speak of secret knowledge passed only to the worthy, suggesting that the cult operated almost like a mystery school. Yet no detailed manual of their rites has ever been found. Ancient Greek writers encountering the cult centuries later compared it to their own mystery religions, like the rites of Eleusis. They described processions with sacred barks, priests carrying effigies of Osiris through the night, and chants that echoed with promises of immortality. To outsiders, these rituals must have seemed eerie and impenetrable. But for Egyptians, they were acts of cosmic renewal, reaffirming the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Some scholars argue the Osiris cult was not just about religion, but also about power. Pharaohs aligned themselves with Osiris to legitimize their rule, depicting themselves as his heirs. To become one with Osiris in death was to guarantee eternal kingship. Ordinary Egyptians too sought connection with him, inscribing their coffins with spells linking their souls to his triumph over death. The cult blurred the line between royal and commoner, offering hope of eternal life to all who embraced his mysteries. And yet the secrecy endures. Inscriptions often stop short of describing the full rites. Some scholars believe this was deliberate knowledge too sacred to record, plainly meant only for those who lived it. Others suggest the rituals involved altered states of consciousness achieved through sound incense, or perhaps substances experiences impossible to capture fully in words. Whatever the case, the silence of the texts only deepens the allure. Stand today among the ruins of Abydos, the desert wind sweeping through broken temples, and the mystery lingers. Beneath the sand lie tunnels and chapels, once filled with worshippers reenacting the god's death. Pilgrims carved prayers into the walls, hoping Osiris would guide them beyond the veil. The stones hold fragments of the story, but the full ritual remains hidden, perhaps forever. So, what were the secrets of the Osiris cult? Were they symbolic plays meant to comfort believers, or transformative rites capable of reshaping human consciousness? Did initiates truly feel reborn, convinced they had touched eternity? Until more evidence emerges, the cult of Osiris will remain a shadow on history. Its rituals sealed in silence, its promise of immortality still echoing in the desert night. Shroud of Turin, the cloth of a king or a hoax of time. In a cathedral in Turin, Italy, lies a piece of cloth that has stirred centuries of devotion, debate, and doubt. Known as the Shroud of Turin, it is a linen burial sheet bearing the faint image of a man who appears to have been crucified. To millions of believers, it is nothing less than the burial shroud of Jesus Christ. To skeptics, it is a medieval forgery that fooled generations. Between faith and science, the shroud remains one of the most hotly contested relics in the world. The shroud measures about 14 feet long and 3 feet wide. Upon its surface is the faint sepia-toned imprint of a human body, front and back. The man depicted bears wounds consistent with crucifixion, blood at the wrists and feet, a gash in the side, marks across the back as if from scourging, and wounds on the head resembling punctures from a crown of thorns. For believers, these details are too precise to be coincidence. For them, the shroud is silent proof of the Passion. Its recorded history begins in the 14th century in France, when it suddenly appeared in the possession of a knight named Geoffroy de Charny. Almost immediately, church authorities expressed skepticism. A bishop denounced it as a painted fraud. Yet pilgrims flocked to see it kneeling before the mysterious image. By the 16th century, the shroud had been transferred to Turin, where it remains to this day, displayed only on rare occasions. Its presence continues to draw both worshippers and critics in equal measure. In 1898, the mystery deepened. An Italian photographer, Secondo Pia, took the first photographs of the shroud. When he developed the negatives, he was stunned. The faint ghostly figure on the cloth appeared in astonishing detail on the photographic plate. The negative revealed a lifelike three-dimensional image of a man's face. This discovery electrified the world, sparking a new wave of fascination and fueling the belief that the shroud was authentic. How could a medieval artist have created an image that functioned like a photographic negative, centuries before photography existed? Modern science entered the debate in the 20th century. In 1978, a team of American researchers under the Shroud of Turin Research Project STIRP conducted exhaustive tests. They concluded that the image was not painted, printed, or dyed. It had no brushstrokes, no pigments detectable under chemical analysis. The image seemed to rest only on the very top fibers of the linen, so shallow it barely penetrated the weave. How the image formed remained a mystery. Yet skeptics pointed to 1988, when carbon-14 dating tests were performed. 3 laboratories dated the cloth between 1260 and 1390 CE, squarely medieval. For many, that was proof it was a hoax. But the story did not end there. Critics of the carbon dating argued the samples may have been contaminated, taken from a section repaired after a fire in the 1500s. Other tests revealed traces of pollen from plants native to the Middle East, suggesting the cloth's origins may predate Europe. Still others point to the wounds, the bloodstains, and the anatomical accuracy as evidence that the shroud defies explanation as simple artwork. Some researchers even argue that the image could have been created by a sudden burst of radiant energy, an idea that inevitably ties the relic back to the resurrection itself. Meanwhile, skeptics maintain more earthly theories. They suggest the shroud could be a form of early photography, a clever medieval trick using light and chemicals. Others insist it is a devotional icon never meant to deceive but to inspire faith. To them, the power of the shroud lies not in authenticity but in symbolism. Whether ancient or medieval, it became an object of devotion, shaping the faith of millions across centuries. Standing before the shroud today, displayed in Turin's cathedral, the atmosphere is heavy. Pilgrims weep, convinced they are in the presence of Christ's burial cloth. Scientists peer at the fibers under microscopes, searching for answers. The linen lies silent, its faint image refusing to reveal whether it was formed by divine, miracle, human hand, or something in between. So, what is the Shroud of Turin, a sacred relic of the resurrection? A brilliant medieval forgery? Or a mystery that lies somewhere between faith and science? Until new evidence emerges, the cloth will remain both a symbol of devotion and a riddle unsolved, an image imprinted not only on linen, but on the human imagination. The Archive ruins. In the windswept steppes of Russia's southern Ural Mountains, archaeologists uncovered a site that would soon be called the Russian Stonehenge. Beneath the soil lay the ruins of a circular settlement perfectly aligned with the movements of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Known as Archaim, this city dated back over 4,000 years, older than many civilizations thought to be the first centers of astronomy. Its discovery in 1987 stunned the world, raising questions about who built it, why it was abandoned, and what purpose it truly served. At first glance, Archaim appeared to be the remains of a fortified village. Its outer walls formed a circle nearly 160 meters across, constructed from timber, clay, and stone. Inside were more concentric circles of dwellings organized with mathematical precision. At its core, a central square stood open to the sky as if meant for rituals or gatherings. Yet what struck researchers most was not its architecture, but its orientation. The city's design mirrored the heavens. From its gates and sightlines, ancient inhabitants could track solstices, equinoxes, and even lunar cycles with astonishing accuracy. The discovery of Archaim forced historians to rethink their timelines. Until then, Stonehenge in England and the pyramids of Egypt were considered the world's earliest monumental observatories. But Archaim was contemporary with both, and arguably more advanced in its alignment. How could a Bronze Age culture far from the Mediterranean and the Near East possess such knowledge of celestial mechanics? It suggested that the people of the Eurasian steppe were far more sophisticated than history books had assumed. Artifacts unearthed in the settlement added to the intrigue. Tools, pottery, and evidence of metalworking revealed a community skilled in craft and trade. Some scholars linked Archaim to the Indo-Iranians, the mysterious Aryan tribes described in ancient texts who may have migrated across vast distances, carrying both language and culture. To others, it seemed to embody a cradle of civilization, long overlooked a hub of innovation that connected East and West before history was written. But beyond the archaeology, Archaim began to attract mystics, spiritual seekers, and conspiracy theorists. They were drawn not just by the ruins, but by the energy of the place. Some claimed the site radiated unusual magnetic fields, sparking strange sensations in visitors. Others insisted Archaim was a portal, a center of cosmic power, where the Earth's energy lines converged. New Age groups dubbed it Russia's sacred navel, a counterpart to Stonehenge and the pyramids, part of a global network of ancient sites bound by hidden geometry. The Russian government quickly recognized its significance. The site was protected as a national treasure, but it also became a magnet for alternative historians. Books and documentaries proclaimed Archaim as evidence of a lost civilization, one that may have predated and even influenced Sumer Egypt and India. Some suggested it was built by survivors of Atlantis spreading their knowledge of the stars. Others, reaching further, claimed Archaim was constructed under the guidance of beings not of this earth, extraterrestrial teachers, who gave humanity its first lessons in astronomy. Skeptics argue for simpler explanations. To them, Archaim was a settlement built by a Bronze Age culture with sharp eyes and practical needs. Tracking the sun and stars helped regulate agriculture, hunting, and seasonal migration. The alignments, while impressive, could be achieved through careful observation over generations without requiring lost civilizations or alien visitors. Yet even these explanations cannot diminish the wonder the builders of Archaim knew the sky intimately and carved their knowledge into the very ground they lived on. Adding to the mystery is Archaim's fate. The settlement appears to have been deliberately abandoned and burned. Some archaeologists believe the inhabitants performed a ritual act of destruction, sacrificing their city before moving on. Why they did this remains unknown. Was it necessity driven by drought or invasion? Or was it symbolic, marking the end of a cycle in their cosmic calendar? The ashes left behind preserve the outline of their world, but not the reasons for its fall. Today, Archaim draws both scientists and seekers. Astronomers measure its alignments while pilgrims meditate among its ruins. To some, it is a place of learning. To others, a place of power. It embodies the tension between history and mystery, fact and myth. Its stones and ashes may belong to the past, but its questions belong to us all. So, what is Archaim? A forgotten observatory, a Bronze Age city of surprising genius, or a fragment of a civilization erased from the record? Was it the work of ordinary humans watching the stars, or did it carry whispers from something greater, perhaps from beyond? In the silence of the Ural Plains, the circular ruins still wait their design, pointing endlessly toward the heavens, as if daring us to find the meaning written in the sky. The Gosford Glyphs. In the rugged bushland of New South Wales, Australia, hidden between towering sandstone walls, lies one of the most hotly debated mysteries in modern archaeology. Carved into the rock face are hundreds of symbols that look uncannily like ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Known as the Gosford Glyphs, they stretch across two sandstone walls, some etched deep and sharp, others faded and weathered by centuries of exposure. For some, these carvings are proof that Egyptian explorers reached Australia thousands of years ago. For others, they are nothing more than an elaborate hoax. The glyphs were first brought to public attention in the 1970s, though locals claim they had been known for decades. The sheer number, over 300 distinct symbols, immediately caught the attention of researchers and enthusiasts. Some inscriptions appeared to match standard Egyptian hieroglyphs, while others seemed more crude or unfamiliar. Translations by amateur Egyptologists suggested tales of royal voyages, even the death of an Egyptian prince far from home. The possibility electrified imaginations. Could ancient Egyptians have crossed oceans to set foot on Australian soil? One translation in particular became legendary. It described the journey of two brothers, sons of a pharaoh, who sailed across the seas to a land of red earth. One brother allegedly died during the expedition and was buried in the foreign land. If accurate, the Gosford glyphs would upend world history, proving not only transoceanic travel, but also a forgotten chapter of Egyptian exploration. Yet professional archaeologists quickly raised doubts. Critics pointed out inconsistencies in the carvings. Some glyphs matched archaic Egyptian forms, while others belonged to much later dynasties, centuries apart in style. The mixture of periods suggested not a coherent text, but a patchwork of symbols copied from books or museum displays. Furthermore, the carving techniques did not match what was expected of authentic Egyptian inscriptions. To skeptics, the glyphs were the work of modern hands, perhaps pranksters, perhaps nationalists, eager to weave Australia into the grand saga of ancient civilizations. Still, the mystery refuses to die. Supporters argue that weathering patterns on the glyphs suggest significant age far older than a 20th century forgery. They also point to Aboriginal legends that speak of visitors from across the sea, strangers who came with different tools and strange languages. Could the glyphs be the result of contact between Egyptian sailors and indigenous Australians, later absorbed into myth? The idea remains tantalizing even if unproven. Other theories swirl around the site. Some suggest the glyphs were carved by Egyptian soldiers who deserted during British colonial times, imitating hieroglyphs they had seen while serving in North Africa. Others believe they were created by early European settlers, fascinated by the exotic allure of Egypt, inscribing their own fantasy narratives into the Australian bush. And then there are those who insist the glyphs are exactly what they appear to be, ancient Egyptian writing, left behind by explorers who sailed farther than anyone believed possible. The Gosford glyphs have also become a magnet for the paranormal. Ancient astronaut theorists cite them as evidence of a global prehistoric network, suggesting that Egypt's gods, or extraterrestrials mistaken for gods, traveled widely, leaving behind their language and symbols. In this view, the glyphs are not just writing, but part of a cosmic map linking sacred sites across the world. Such claims lack scientific backing, but they thrive in the fertile ground of mystery. The controversy is fueled by the lack of definitive research. The glyphs are carved into soft sandstone, vulnerable to erosion and vandalism. Some inscriptions may have been added or altered over time, further muddying the waters. Without controlled excavation or datable materials, proving authenticity is nearly impossible. What remains are competing interpretations, hoax homage, or history, each passionately defended by its believers. Despite official skepticism, the Gosford glyphs have become a cultural landmark. Tourists trek into the bush to see them standing before the walls of symbols, and wondering who carved them and why. For the local Aboriginal community, the site holds spiritual significance, and some elders caution against sensational claims that overshadow their own cultural heritage. The glyphs, whether ancient or modern, remind us of how stories can shape landscapes, turning simple carvings into touchstones of mystery. So, what are the Gosford glyphs? The record of an Egyptian voyage lost to time, the handiwork of modern dreamers carving fantasy into stone, or something in between, a palimpsest of cultures and myths layered into the sandstone cliffs of Australia. Until science finds a way to read their true age, the glyphs will remain an enigma, etched into rock, but written in mystery. They are a message without a sender, a story without an ending, waiting for someone to decode what may or may not be the greatest rewriting of history ever found in stone. The Longyu Caves. In eastern China, near the village of Xi'an in Zhejiang province, lies a mystery carved into the earth, so vast it dwarfs imagination. Beneath rolling hills and quiet farmland, explorers uncovered a network of enormous underground chambers known as the Longyu Caves. First discovered in '92 when locals drained a pond that had been full for centuries, the caves revealed themselves as a breathtaking feats of engineering giant stone halls with ceilings rising 30 meters high, walls chiseled with perfect symmetry, and an expanse covering thousands of square meters. Yet no ancient text, no record, no oral tradition speaks of their creation. They seem to have appeared out of nowhere, a forgotten masterpiece buried in silence. Each cave is monumental in scale, carved entirely from solid sandstone. Researchers have identified at least 24 separate chambers, all painstakingly excavated by hand. Every wall and ceiling bears the same mysterious parallel markings, as though made by enormous chisels, dragged with exacting precision. The sheer labor involved defies belief. Experts estimate that each cave would have required the removal of thousands of cubic meters of stone, an effort involving hundreds of workers for decades. And yet there are no broken tools, no piles of discarded rock, no written records, only the finished chambers, silent and pristine. The mystery deepens when we consider the precision of construction. Columns stand evenly spaced, staircases rise at exact angles, and ceilings soar without collapse. Even after more than 2,000 years, if not longer, the caves remain stable, their sandstone walls showing little sign of erosion or structural failure. Whoever carved them understood engineering principles far ahead of their time, shaping a subterranean complex that still challenges modern architects. But why? What purpose could such vast underground halls have served? Some scholars argue they were quarries, vast pits dug to harvest sandstone for construction. But this explanation falters if the goal was stone extraction. Why carve such perfect chambers with decorative marks? Why leave behind pillars, stairs, and shapes that serve no quarrying function? Others suggest they were tombs, yet no remains, coffins, or funerary artifacts have ever been found. Temples, fortresses, granaries. Each theory collapses under scrutiny, leaving the purpose of the Longyu Caves as empty as the halls themselves. Local legends offer whispers. Villagers speak of the caves as the work of immortals or ancient kings, their labor hidden beneath the earth to guard treasures or secrets. Some connect them to Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, whose ambition to control death itself led him to build armies of terracotta soldiers and sprawling underground palaces. Could the Longyu Caves have been part of some forgotten imperial project, abandoned and erased from history? Without inscriptions or records, the truth lies buried deeper than the stone itself. The uniform parallel markings on the walls are among the most puzzling features. They look almost like machine striations, as though enormous drills or saws passed over the stone. Every inch of wall and ceiling is covered with them, as if decoration was as important as the excavation itself. To some, this suggests the use of advanced tools, lost techniques, or even outside intervention. Ancient astronaut theorists claim the caves were created with help from extraterrestrials, pointing to the sheer scale and precision as beyond the capabilities of ancient villagers. To mainstream scholars, the marks may represent cultural symbolism or simply a functional carving method, but their meaning remains elusive. Adding to the enigma is the silence of Chinese historical texts. Dynasty dynasties that recorded everything from tax ledgers to astronomical events say nothing about the Longyou caves. No scroll mentions their construction, no folklore hints at their existence, no empire claims them. For a culture that documented even the most mundane details of daily life, this absence is staggering. Were the caves deliberately erased from memory? Or were they built by a people so ancient that even China's earliest dynasties had forgotten them? Today, the Longyou caves attract tourists and researchers alike. Standing within their towering halls, one feels the weight of human or perhaps superhuman ambition carved into stone. Lights now illuminate the grand staircases and towering columns, but the questions remain as dark as ever. Engineers marvel at their stability, historians puzzle over their silence, and mystics see them as portals to forgotten worlds. Each theory, each guess only underscores the enormity of the mystery. So, what are the Longyou caves? The hidden legacy of a forgotten dynasty. A ceremonial complex designed for purposes we can no longer comprehend. Or proof that ancient humanity or something beyond humanity achieved feats we cannot yet explain. Until more evidence emerges, the caves remain what they have always been, a riddle hollowed out of solid rock, a monument to mystery itself, echoing with questions that may never find an answer. The Tartaria Tablets. In the rolling hills of Romania, beneath layers of earth hiding remnants of forgotten villages, archaeologists unearthed 3 small clay tablets. Their surfaces were scratched with strange symbols, lines, spirals, and markings that look suspiciously like writing. Known today as the Tartaria Tablets, these fragments could hold the key to rewriting the history of civilization. For if their markings are truly an early script, they might predate Mesopotamia, long considered the birthplace of writing. The tablets were discovered in 1961 by archaeologist Nikolai Vlasa during an excavation of a Neolithic site near the village of Tartaria. The find was modest in size, 3 small clay plaques each about the size of a palm. Yet, their markings shocked researchers. Some symbols resembled pictographs, while others looked like abstract signs arranged in deliberate sequences. If these were decorative, they were oddly systematic. If they were symbolic, they could represent the earliest known attempt at written communication. The dating of the tablets only deepened the mystery. Radiocarbon analysis of associated artifacts suggested they were created around 5300 BCE, centuries before the Sumerians developed cuneiform. This meant that the people of the Danube Valley, often considered a peripheral culture in the grand sweep of history, might have invented writing first. Such a claim, however, directly challenged the conventional narrative of Mesopotamia as humanity's first cradle of literacy. Unsurprisingly, scholars disagreed fiercely. Some archaeologists argued the tablets were merely ritual objects never meant to record language. They could have been religious tokens, their markings symbolic rather than linguistic. The fact that the tablets were found buried with human remains suggests a funerary context, perhaps offerings to deities. If so, the signs might not be writing in the strict sense, but part of a spiritual code meaningful only within that culture. Yet others point out that the systematic arrangement of the symbols strongly resembles early scripts too structured to be dismissed as decoration. The controversy escalated when comparisons were drawn between the Tartaria symbols and those of the Vinča culture, a prehistoric society that flourished along the Danube. The Vinča signs found on pottery and artifacts across the Balkans share striking similarities with the tablets. Some researchers now suggest that the Vinča people developed a proto-writing system, a symbolic language thousands of years ahead of its time. But mainstream opinion remains cautious, wary of declaring any true writing without clear evidence of grammar or syntax. Of course, such a tantalizing mystery has inspired more speculative theories. Fringe historians argue that the Tartaria tablets are remnants of a lost civilization, advanced yet forgotten, whose knowledge influenced both Europe and the Near East. Others go further still, linking the symbols to Atlantean myths, or suggesting they encode astronomical knowledge far beyond Neolithic capacity. To believers in ancient mysteries, the tablets are proof that human history is older and stranger than textbooks admit. Skeptics counter with practical points. They note that the tablets were baked in modern times, possibly during the excavation itself, making radiocarbon dating uncertain. The original context of their burial was also disturbed, raising questions about whether the dates assigned to them are accurate. If they are younger then, claim their significance diminishes. Still, even if not the oldest writing in the world, they remain unique, enigmatic tokens carved with purpose by a people whose voices have otherwise vanished. Standing in a museum today, gazing at the Tartaria tablets, one feels the weight of possibility. Their surfaces are rough, their markings simple, yet the mystery they represent is profound. Did a Neolithic farmer press these symbols into clay to record a prayer, a name, or a story? Did a priest lay them in a grave to speak silently to the gods? Or were they fragments of a lost system of writing, a spark of literacy that flickered and died before history could record it? The Tartarii tablets remain as quiet as the day they were buried, refusing to reveal their meaning. They sit at the crossroads of imagination and science, perhaps the earliest words ever written, or perhaps just scratches made with ritual intent. Until someone deciphers the code, they will remain one of archaeology's most provocative riddles, small in size, but immense in implication.